have a splenic authority, your intuition whispers, it doesn't yell. And if you miss it the first time, it's not going to come back. So let me walk you through how to actually listen to your splenic authority, what it actually means if you are a projector versus a manifester, and how to make sure that you don't miss it in real time. If you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are not new, welcome back. My name is Brenna, and I'm a human design reader and astrologer of 9.5 years, teaching you all about the practical elements of human design and how to look out for it in your real life so you can actually make real life changes. Now, I have this video upon request from a beautiful splenic authority, the Grateful, and her comment or their comment that they left on my profile. So thank you so much for giving this manifesting generator something to respond to, which is my strategy to teach you how to use your authority. Now, the first thing we're going to cover is what exactly the splenic authority is and what it isn't. And then we're going to talk about how you can actually do things in your real life examples and circumstances to understand how to pay attention to it when you're experiencing it in real time. Now, I attract a lot of projectors and splenic projectors. You're actually my biggest group in Patreon, projectors, not just splenic. There's emotional authority, self-projected, mental, right? To name some other authorities here. But splenic authorities really have to pay attention to the way that their intuition whispers to them, because your intuition isn't very loud. And the reason for that is because it's focused on or comes from what's called the spleen, or the splenic authority, splenic center, that is all about our primal instincts and survival awareness, like the OG element of what it meant to keep us alive this long as humans, for us to be able to evolve to the point that we're at right now in a new technological age. Now, because we are in said technological age, there is a lot of incoming data, people, places, and things that are teaching you to go against your authority, which is why it's so complex and challenging for you to understand how to use this as a splenic projector or a splenic authority in general. So the splenic authority moves very quickly because, again, it is based on our intuition, our primal instincts and fears. And you know, when you see a deer in the woods and it stops the second that he hears a twig snaps, that is what a splenic authority looks like, where it's that split second, very in the moment, present tense, happening right now authority that is hyper alert to its surroundings. Now, because we have all this input, and a lot of us, because of that, especially my splenic authorities, have dysregulated nervous systems, this is where you're kind of allowing yourself to dull your senses. And I want you to think of ignoring your splenic authority and this intuition, this primal awareness, your judgment, your discernment, as when you keep hitting snooze on your alarm. And when you still have the same alarm or the little ding or the chime that goes off repeatedly, think of how easy it is to ignore that, and it kind of fades into the background. It's harder for you to wake up because you keep hitting snooze and you're not changing the sound of that alarm on your alarm clock. That's what happens to our splenic authority when we keep dulling its guidance and its wisdom over time. We're familiar with what it means to ignore it because that's just what's easier for us to do when we don't have to pay attention to it and we have all this other input because we have dysregulated nervous systems. Now, because the spleen is all about our primal instincts and awareness, you really want to pay attention to your bodily sensations, right? This is one of the first tips that I'll give you, is to really be aware of the somatics of your body. What makes your hair stand up on your arm? What makes your shoulders turn inward a bit? What makes you just kind of feel like a little bit more alert? Or what is it that you can do to pay attention to even what your gut is telling you, that little kind of jump, that flip that happens in your stomach, and notice where you're kind of locking in or what's making you lock in that moment. Now, what the splenic authority isn't is something that creates these obsessive thought loops in your head that's making you use or overuse your logical mind and your brain. Now, you may be thinking, Brenna, well, isn't listening to my body and my intuition using logic? And in the words of human design, or under the human design umbrella, we never want to rule our somatic intuition with our logical thoughts, minds, and concepts. This is really true for any authority. Also, my mental projectors, which I'll talk about a step further in another video. But in this situation, we're really focusing on what, again, the somatics of our body are telling us, not what is it, I feel this, how do I assess it based on my logical brain and mind. It's kind of like you walk into a restaurant. I want you to think of like That's So Raven, where she has the vision of what's happening, or Final Destination has the vision. She comes back out and is like, we're not supposed to turn left, we're supposed to turn right. It really does happen that quickly. Your splenic authority is also not something that can wait. And this can also be really tricky because you're trying to find ways to fit within the homogenization of society, which human design teaches us not to do, right? Because that's what got us sick and stuck in the first place. You don't want to take time to figure it out or figure out ways to dance around a person, place, or thing, or explain yourself. It's very tied to sacral authority, although sacral authority even takes a little bit more time than you do. So you may find yourself surrounded by sacral authorities like myself in your life that are generators or manifesting generators, that you can kind of observe how they follow their gut instincts but realize that sometimes they even take a little bit longer, if not most times they take a little bit longer than you. So paying attention to that. This isn't something that you want to take time to wait out long emotional circumstances, right? I should say, like with a little bit more clarity, if you are at in a heightened emotional state, you want to respond from that, right? Not making some things worse for yourself, but make sure that if something is really upsetting you, you're setting a boundary in that moment. Now, because you're so open, you're very aware and sensitive to other people's needs and how you're affecting them, even when you set a boundary that's really good for you. But my job as your human design guide is to tell you that that is what's going to create an overflow of energy so you can pour into people in the right circumstances, the right places, the right time to be in alignment versus trying to make people happy just because they've been in your life for a while. You're uncomfortable because you'll see them at work the next day, so on and so forth. So now that we know how our splenic intuition is working for you guys as projectors and manifestors, we're going to go a little bit further. And some of these tips I've actually taken from my $5 Splenic Whisper workbook. So you can get that in the show notes below if you want to go deeper, if you want the exact tracking prompts that I've used for these clients that I've also helped. That's an affordable way just to get you familiar with exactly how to track what's happening. And this is a practice that becomes perfect over time. Human design is called the human design experiment. So giving yourself good times, trackers, ways to follow what your splenic whisper actually looks like is important. But let's get into some of the specifics of how you can start to work with your splenic whisper. Because this is our primal awareness, splenic authority should be second nature, right? If we have encouraged the benefits of the spleen and using our instinct, using our intuition, using our discernment, it wouldn't be as hard for us to unmuck it. So the first thing that you're going to do is just spend a day practicing what it's like to listen to your body. Maybe it's on a Sunday or a weekend day that you don't have as much to do, or a day where you really just follow your impulses. What does that look like as you go through your work day or your weekend day, the tasks that you'd like to do, where you're just kind of floating through your day in awareness of what your body is telling you, who you should talk to, what you should do? Is it that you need a copious amount of rest? Is it that you actually want to go out and go to a summer concert, do something outdoors? Really pay attention to the somatic sensations of your body and what your body needs. And I also encourage you, a kind of second step is if you need a lot of rest and relaxation, if that's what your body is telling you, especially as a projector, because you guys are so open and your environment is so sensitive to you, that also tells me that you may want to do some more research on nervous system regulation and paying attention to that as well to see how to regulate your nervous system and just bring into your awareness what is dysregulating your nervous system so much that you do need to kind of bed rot all day on your splenic whisper practice day. Now, what also happens and what can kind of come up as you're going through your day is that you're really detached from your bodily sensations, or you realize how much you are unaware of what feels good and safe and normal for your body, right? There's a lot of vagus system, vagus nerve activation that you could do to practice humming, grounding, maybe start your day off with a little bit of meditation to just kind of clear your auric field from your environment, especially as a projector. My manifestors, you guys have a little bit more of a buffer for this. However, it depends on the nature and nurture of how you have been allowed to express your peace versus your anger. Have you been somebody that's been allowed to express your anger in a good way or express your peacefulness? Allow yourself to be peaceful rather than passive. That's also an important distinction for you guys to make. Now, after you've done that, you want to follow what your urges are. So your urges can be something that's a really strong pull. I find my manifestors' urges to be a little bit more strong. My projectors, you guys are kind of like, your urges are almost whispering to you like Grandmother Willow from Pocahontas. Whereas my manifestors, you guys have that strong pull to say, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. I'm not asking for permission. Whereas projectors, it's a little bit more feminine passivity. And that doesn't mean, it's feminine, whether you're male, female, or anyone in between. I would say that manifestors tend to hold a little bit more of masculine energy, whereas projectors lean on the side of feminine, no matter your gender. And when you're following these urges, if someone's really excited to get you go along to something with them, to a dinner or whatever, and your answer is no, just pay attention to the fact that it's a no, not right now. It doesn't mean a no forever. So if someone asks you if you want to go to dinner at a new restaurant in the morning and you say no, that doesn't mean that when they ask you again in the evening that you're going to say no again. It's just that in this moment, it feels like a no, but maybe ask me again later and I could potentially change my mind. Now, you want to also use discernment for who are the people, places, and things, or people specifically that are asking you these questions. What places are they asking you to go? What things are they asking you to do or to be around to partake in? That's also going to use important discernment to see also if you are getting the vibe that this person's also living in alignment or has your best interests in mind, or is it somebody that's trying to take advantage of you, especially if they're inviting you as a projector to do something that you don't necessarily want to be doing, or they get more benefit out of you doing the thing, right? If a boss or a coworker is asking you to do more work and they're recognizing how much of a good worker you are, employee you are, and you know that you would burn yourself out, follow that splenic urge to say, no, not right now, because I don't have enough bandwidth for it, right? Or no can be a complete sentence depending on the circumstance, but just following that urge and not second guessing it. And remember, you're just trying this for a day, right? It doesn't have to be something that you have to think about, oh my God, I'm doing this forever and this feels really scary and overwhelming. You really just want to take it one day at a time, because that's exactly what our splenic awareness is supposed to teach us. Slow and steady wins the race. And when we're practicing grounded awareness, I always say being where our feet are, this is the best thing that you can do to tap into your splenic authority and splenic awareness. Another key indicator that I'll mention as you're going through your practice, and what I've mentioned a little bit in that Splenic Whisper workbook, is how your body will really keep score of being sick and sick for a long time, especially if you kept following or pushing past your urges and saying yes to people you should have said no to. The spleen is also tied to our immune system. And of course, I have to use my disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. This is just educational purposes only, right? But this is where we're really following, where are we feeling a little bit of chronic fatigue or a lot of bit of chronic fatigue, or, a lingering cold that will last full months. I had a splenic projector that I mentored in my 8-week accelerated mentorship program. And she was saying how from January to it was like April, she really had a long cold and a cough that she could not shake. And so a lot of the work that we did together was helping her to define and redefine what were proper invitations versus things that she should have said no to, and how to unmuck that, right? How to really get more clarity on whatever it is that she needed to get done so she could bring it into her forward awareness. Because after 45 years, there were a lot of stifling, a lot of stuff that was built upon her suppressing that energy, especially because she was living in New York City. There was a lot of that suppression, right? Where she wasn't even aware of what she wanted to do, where it didn't feel safe in her body to say yes to herself because of people pleasing, being a woman, right? All of those things that kind of layered onto that in a very masculine, dominant, energetic environment, right? Of New York City and Manhattan. And so paying attention to that, it may feel a little bit unsafe or scary, but knowing that your body really does keep score, right? That's the title of that book for a reason. And your urges, when you dismiss them, it's like you keep putting water on a fire that's really just trying to ignite so that it can keep you warm and healthy. And when you take logs off of that fire, it's when it starts to fizzle out. So our spleen, again, is also tied to the immune system, our nervous system, and paying attention to that. Every energy center in human design is correlated to a different biological element, if you will. So paying attention to that too, because that's a key indicator. What have you been saying yes to? How has it made you sick? And if you're watching this with a cold as a splenic authority, pay attention to like, oh, I actually wanted to do this and I forced myself to do that. Those are really big indicators for you. Now, I want you to think of yourself as a splenic superhero. You're the person that's like, watch out. Oh my gosh, I'm saving you. I'm doing this. And you're there in a flash, right? Literally can think of yourself as Barry Allen. So another kind of example that I'll highlight for you is that, especially if you're a projector, right? And you are in a situation where somebody has invited you to do something, right? Say that you're a spiritual entrepreneur that has been waiting for people to recognize that you are really good at Reiki or your craft. And someone invites you to go to do a spiritual fair and set up and do Reiki for free. But then you say, wait, I know that I want to get paid for this. This person's inviting me and recognizing that I'm good at my job, but they want me to do this for free without paying me. Oh, okay, well, I might as well just say yes, because logically I should accept this invitation. That's where you're going against your urge that's saying, well, remember you wanted to get paid for this. Remember this is something that you deserve to get paid for. That's that whisper. And in that moment, you want your splenic superhero to come in and say, I appreciate that. And I'm so grateful that you recognize this, but I made a promise to myself and my business that I'm only going to do things that I can get paid for. And that's really going to create a ton of personal self-respect and confidence when you set that boundary. And that person may end up saying, you know what, let me talk to so-and-so coordinator or event producer, and let me see if we can actually use some of our budget because we really want you there. Let the universe surprise you when you're listening to your spleen and your splenic superhero to really see how you can activate more abundance by following the proper invitations, knowing what you're being recognized for, and really following through through with setting good boundaries for yourself, because that's how you teach the universe, saying, I know you're trying to send me invitations and I asked for them, but you know that these are the kinds that I want. So I'm going to show you by setting boundaries, working with you, not against you. Now, I love the beauty of being a mystical splenic authority. You are super incredibly spiritual. You have great discernment, and it is up to you to practice not letting that get squashed. You know you best, and you know what's best for you and others at the end of the day. We need you as projectors, especially my manifestors as well, to stand in your truth, to live in your power, because you create a beautiful ripple effect of confidence, of change, of good energy when you don't squash that special splenic urge, that splenic superhero that you are meant to be. So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you again to the grateful for writing your comments. So you gave me something to respond to pour into you. Don't forget that the $5 Splenic Whisper workbook is at the link in the show notes below if you're interested and feel called intuitively. If your urge says yes to have that as a tracker that you can use forever, again and again. It doesn't go bad. There's no expiration date. Your Splenic Authority is always going to be there. So just to allow yourself to pour into you, and let me know if you have any other questions about where you feel a little bit stuck or want to get some more recognition as a projector, a Splenic Authority, a manifestor, so on and so forth. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.